There is something peaceful about Sunday mornings in a house you built with your own hands. I was sitting on the balcony of our home, watching the California sun paint everything gold. Clorinda was in the kitchen, making coffee, and I could hear our kids laughing on the lawn. Life felt complete. But 10 years ago, there were people who wanted to erase me from my wife's life completely. They pretended I did not exist, and last week, those same people showed up at our front gate with fake smiles, acting like a decade of silence never happened. Before I tell you what I said that made the color drain from their faces, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below and hit that like button. If you have ever felt rejected by people who were supposed to love you, subscribe to this channel because this story is for you. My name is Marcus. I grew up in Baltimore in a middle-class neighborhood where people looked out for each other. My father worked as an electrician for 32 years. My mother was a nurse at Johns Hopkins for almost as long. They taught me that hard work and integrity were the only currencies that mattered in life. I believed them, and I still do. I met Clorinda at a technology conference in Denver when we were both 26 years old. She was presenting a software solution her team had developed, and I was there scouting for potential partners for the startup I was trying to launch. The moment she walked onto that stage, something shifted in me. She had this presence that commanded attention without demanding it. Her dark brown hair fell past her shoulders, and her blue eyes sparkled with intelligence and warmth. But it was her laugh during the question and answer session that really got me. Someone asked a ridiculous question, and instead of dismissing it, she laughed this genuine, full-bodied laugh and answered with grace. After her presentation, I found myself walking toward her like my feet had a mind of their own. We talked for 3 hours that first day. She told me about growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut, in a wealthy family that valued appearances above almost everything else. She told me about her dreams of starting her own company someday, of building something meaningful. I told her about Baltimore, about my parents, about my own entrepreneurial ambitions. By the end of that conversation, I knew I wanted to see her again. We started dating despite living in different states. I would fly to Connecticut once a month, and we would spend hours on video calls every night. She made me laugh. She challenged me intellectually. She supported my dreams without hesitation. After a year of this long-distance dance, I took her to the restaurant where we had our first official date and got down on one knee. She said yes before I even finished asking the question. I thought that was the hard part. I had no idea what was coming. Clorinda decided it was time for me to meet her family. She warned me they were traditional and conservative, but she believed they would come around once they got to know me. I wanted to believe her. I bought a nice bottle of wine and rehearsed conversation topics in my head during the entire flight. Their house in Greenwich was exactly what you would expect from old money. A large colonial-style home with white columns and a perfectly manicured lawn. The kind of place that whispers wealth without shouting it. Clorinda squeezed my hand as we walked up the stone pathway. I could feel her nervous energy mixing with my own. Her mother, Diane, opened the door. She was around 60 years old with silver hair cut short and practical. Her eyes swept over me in one quick motion, and I watched something shift in her expression. It was subtle, but I caught it. A flicker of displeasure, quickly masked by a tight smile. Her father, George, stood behind Diane. He was 62, tall and distinguished-looking, but he seemed uncomfortable, like he would rather be anywhere else. He shook my hand briefly and mumbled something that might have been a greeting. Then there was Patrice, Clorinda's older sister. She was 30, conventionally beautiful, with the same blue eyes as Clorinda, but none of the warmth. Her husband, Bradley, stood beside her, a corporate lawyer who looked like he had stepped out of a catalog for expensive watches. Patrice looked at me like I was something unpleasant she had found on the bottom of her shoe. Dinner was an interrogation disguised as polite conversation. Diane asked about my education, my career, my family's background. Every answer I gave seemed to disappoint her in some way she was too polished to express directly. Patrice kept making comments about Bradley's achievements, his partnership at the law firm, their vacation home in Martha's Vineyard. The comparisons were subtle but unmistakable. George said almost nothing the entire meal. He just watched me with an expression I could not read, occasionally glancing at his wife as if waiting for permission to speak. Under the table, Clorinda found my hand and held it tight. That small gesture told me everything. She knew exactly what was happening, and she was choosing me anyway. The phone call came that same night. Clorinda and I were in the guest room when her cell phone rang. It was Diane. I watched Clorinda's face as she listened, watched the hope drain from her eyes and get replaced by something harder. When she hung up, she told me what her mother had said. Diane had been blunt. I was not suitable. I was not appropriate for someone of Clorinda's background. She used phrases like cultural differences and different social circles, but Clorinda saw through every word. This was about one thing and one thing only: the color of my skin. Diane had given Clorinda an ultimatum: choose your family or choose him. There would be no middle ground, no compromise, no acceptance. I remember sitting on the edge of that bed, feeling like I had ruined everything. I told Clorinda she did not have to do this. I told her I would understand if she chose her family. They had known her for her entire life. I had only known her for a year. Clorinda looked at me with tears streaming down her face, but her voice was steady when she spoke. She said she had already made her choice. She chose me. Not because I was asking her to, but because she knew what real love felt like now, and she was not willing to give that up for people who could not see past their own prejudice. That night, I held her while she cried. I promised her I would spend the rest of my life making sure she never regretted that choice. In the months before our wedding, Clorinda tried to build bridges. She sent her family beautiful wedding invitations, hand-addressed with care. She called her mother to talk, but Diane either did not answer or kept conversations short and cold. She reached out to Patrice multiple times, hoping her sister might soften. Instead, Patrice blocked her on every platform and sent one final text message that read, "Good luck with your choice. You will need it." George called once, just once. He told Clorinda he was sorry, but he could not go against Diane. He said he loved her, but his voice sounded hollow, like he was reading from a script he did not believe in. Clorinda thanked him for calling and hung up. She did not cry that time. I think she was starting to build walls around her heart just to survive. Our wedding was small and beautiful. We held it at a vineyard in Napa Valley with rolling hills and golden light. My entire family came. My mother, my father, my brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles and cousins. They welcomed Clorinda like she had always been one of us. My mother Barbara pulled Clorinda aside before the ceremony. I watched from across the room as my mother took my future wife's hands in hers. Later, Clorinda told me what she had said: "You are my daughter now. You will always have a family with us." Clorinda cried during our vows, happy tears mixed with sad ones. Because even on the most beautiful day of her life, there was an empty section of chairs where her family should have been sitting. Her mother, her father, her sister. All absent, all choosing their prejudice over their own blood. I made her a promise that day. I told her we would build our own family, a family where love had no conditions and no one would ever make her feel like she was not enough. The first year of our marriage was a study in contrasts. On one hand, Clorinda and I were building something beautiful together. We moved to San Jose and rented a small apartment. We both worked long hours, saving every penny we could for our dream of starting a technology company. On the other hand, Clorinda was grieving a family that was still alive, but had chosen to treat her like she was dead. She tried a few more times that first year. She sent Christmas cards with photos of us, hoping they might spark some warmth. No response ever came. She called her mother on Diane's birthday, and Diane hung up after 3 seconds. She sent emails to Patrice that bounced back because she had been blocked. The rejection took its toll. There were nights when I would wake up to find her side of the bed empty. I would find her in the living room, staring at old family photos on her phone, tears running silently down her face. She never wanted to talk about it in those moments. She just needed me to sit beside her in the darkness. I suggested therapy, not because something was wrong with her, but because she was carrying a weight that no one should carry alone. She resisted at first, but eventually agreed. It helped. Slowly, she started to accept that she could not control her family's choices. She could only control her own response to them. We threw ourselves into building our company. We worked out of our garage in those early days, surviving on instant noodles and dreams. Clorinda was brilliant at developing software solutions. I handled the business side, the marketing, the client relationships. We complemented each other perfectly. The first 2 years were brutal. We had moments where we thought we would have to give up. There were nights when we counted our remaining savings and wondered if we had made a terrible mistake. But we kept going. We believed in what we were building and in each other. By year 3, things started to shift. We landed our first major client, a mid-sized company that needed exactly what we had built. Word spread, more clients came. By year 4, we caught the attention of a venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. They invested enough money to let us scale in ways we had only dreamed about. That same year, Clorinda found out she was pregnant. We cried when we saw the positive test. Our daughter Amelia was born on a rainy Tuesday in March, and I had never seen anything more perfect in my entire life. 3 years later, our son Julian arrived loud and demanding and absolutely wonderful. My mother became a regular presence in our lives. She flew out from Baltimore several times a year to help with the grandchildren she adored. She and Clorinda grew close in a way that filled some of the void Diane had left. Clorinda started calling her mom, and my mother cried the first time she heard it, but there were still hard moments. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday, Clorinda would glance at her phone, hoping for a message that never came. Every time she heard someone talk about their mother, I saw a shadow cross her face. The wound was healing, but it would never fully close. In year 5, something happened that ripped that wound wide open again. Clorinda was scrolling through social media when she came across a photo on Patrice's Facebook page. It was a large family gathering at the Greenwich house. Everyone was there, Diane sitting in the center like a queen, Patrice and Bradley with their 2 children, aunts, uncles, cousins, a huge group of smiling faces under a banner that read, "Family Reunion." The caption said, "Nothing beats family time. So blessed." Clorinda was not in any of the photos. There was no empty chair for her, no mention of her existence. It was as if she had never been born. I found her in her home office that night sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. She kept saying the same thing over and over. "It is like I never existed to them, like I was never real." I held her for hours. There was nothing I could say that would make it better. All I could do was be there. 2 years later, George died of a heart attack. Clorinda found out from an obituary someone shared on social media. Her own father's death, and no one bothered to tell her. She wanted to go to the funeral. Part of her still hoped that maybe tragedy would bring reconciliation, but she was terrified of being turned away at the door of her own father's memorial service. I offered to go with her. I would have walked through fire for her, but she decided she could not bear the potential humiliation. Instead, she sent flowers with a card that simply said, "I loved you, Dad." She never found out if anyone acknowledged them. By year 8, our company had grown beyond anything we had imagined. We were valued at over $200 million. We bought a house in Los Altos Hills, a beautiful 12,000 square foot property with views that took your breath away. But Clorinda and I never forgot where we came from. We stayed grounded. We made sure our children understood the value of hard work and kindness. That year, a major technology magazine ran a feature story on Clorinda. They called her a visionary, a trailblazer, a woman who had built an empire from nothing. The article went viral. People shared it everywhere. It talked about her journey, her struggles, her triumphs. It did not mention her family by name, but it referenced the personal challenges she had overcome. Shortly after the article came out, I noticed a change in Clorinda's social media. People she had not heard from in years were suddenly trying to connect with her. Distant relatives, old acquaintances, everyone wanted a piece of the success story. And then we ended up on the cover of Forbes. The headline called us a power couple redefining the technology industry. The article detailed our net worth, our company's growth trajectory, our philanthropic efforts. Suddenly, everyone knew exactly how successful Clorinda had become. I learned later that Patrice saw the Forbes article first. She showed it to Diane with barely concealed jealousy. The sister she had dismissed the daughter Diane had disowned was now wealthier and more successful than any of them had ever been. To make matters more interesting, Bradley was in serious financial trouble. A major lawsuit had gone badly, and his partnership at the firm was in jeopardy. The family that had looked down on us was suddenly struggling while we thrived. One Saturday morning, our security system alerted us to visitors at the front gate. I pulled up the camera feed on my phone and felt my stomach drop. There were 3 people standing at our gate. Diane looking older and smaller than I remembered, Patrice, her eyes darting around at the property with undisguised hunger, and Bradley trying to look confident but clearly uncomfortable. I called Clorinda over. She looked at the screen and I watched her face go through about 7 different emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, pain, anger, confusion, and finally something that looked almost like peace. I asked her what she wanted to do. I told her I would support whatever she decided. If she wanted to let them in, I would stand beside her. If she wanted to tell them to leave, I would do that too. If she wanted to pretend we were not home, we could do that. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at me and said, "I want to face them, but I need you with me." We walked to the front gate together. Diane spoke first, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Clorinda, sweetheart, it has been so long. We have missed you so much." Patrice stood behind her mother, eyes still scanning the property like she was calculating its value. Bradley attempted to shake my hand. I looked at his outstretched palm and kept my hands at my sides. He withdrew awkwardly. Diane continued her performance. "We were hoping we could talk. Families should be together. Do you not think life is too short for misunderstandings?" I watched Clorinda's face. It was perfectly composed, calm in a way that told me she had been preparing for this moment for 10 years, even if she did not know it. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady and clear. "There were no misunderstandings, Mother. You told me to choose between my family and Marcus. Do you remember that phone call? Because I remember every word." Diane's smile flickered but held. "That was such a long time ago, dear. People say things they do not mean when they are upset." Clorinda nodded slowly. "You are right. It was a long time ago. 10 years, actually. 10 years of silence. 10 Christmas cards I sent that you never answered. A phone call on your birthday where you hung up on me after 3 seconds. 10 years of being erased from every family photo, every gathering, every memory." She paused and I could see Diane starting to squirm. "Do you know how I found out Dad died? I saw it on the internet. An obituary that someone shared. My own father and I had to find out he was gone from a stranger's social media post." Diane's face had lost some of its color. "George's death was complicated," she started. "No." Clorinda's voice cut through the excuse like a knife. "It was not complicated. You chose not to tell me. Just like you chose not to invite me to family reunions. Just like you chose to pretend I did not exist because I married a black man." The word hung in the air. No one had said it out loud until that moment, but there it was. The truth that had been lurking beneath every polite excuse and coded phrase for a decade. Patrice tried to intervene. "Clorinda, this is not fair. We came here to make peace, and you are attacking us." Clorinda turned to her sister with an expression that could have frozen water. "You blocked me on every platform for 10 years, Patrice. You sent me a message on my wedding day telling me good luck like it was a curse. You do not get to talk about what is fair." She turned back to Diane. "I know why you are here, Mother. It is not because you miss me. It is not because you finally realized you were wrong. It is because you saw the Forbes article. You know exactly how much Marcus and I are worth now. And I know Bradley is in financial trouble. I know you are struggling to keep the Greenwich house since Dad passed." Diane's composure finally cracked. "That is not... We just wanted..." "You wanted money." Clorinda's voice was still calm, almost gentle. "You did not come here for family. You came here for what you thought family might give you. There was a long silence. Patrice looked like she wanted to disappear. Bradley had taken several steps back. Diane seemed to age 10 years in 10 seconds. Clorinda stepped closer to her mother. Her voice dropped lower, but I could still hear every word. You told me to choose between my family and Marcus. I chose Marcus. And you know what he gave me? Love without conditions, respect, support, a real family that never made me feel like I was not enough. He gave me everything you never could. She straightened up and looked at all three of them. You are not my family anymore. You gave up that title 10 years ago when you decided your prejudice was more important than your daughter. And you do not get to come back now just because I have something you want. She reached for my hand. Let us go inside, honey. We turned to walk back to the house, but Clorinda stopped and looked over her shoulder one more time. Do not ever come back here. If I see you at this gate again, I will call the police. I looked at their faces as we walked away. Diane was pale as paper. Patrice stood frozen, like someone had unplugged her. Bradley was already backing toward their car. We went inside and closed the door. As soon as we were in the living room, Clorinda sat down on the couch and began to cry. Not the quiet tears I had seen so many times over the years. These were deep, shaking sobs that came from somewhere she had kept locked away for a decade. But there was something different about these tears. They were not tears of sadness or rejection. They were tears of release. I sat beside her and held her. I did not say anything because there was nothing that needed to be said. She had carried this weight for 10 years, the hope that they might change, the pain of their rejection, the anger she had suppressed to protect herself. All of it came pouring out in that moment. Our children came running in, alarmed to see their mother crying. Amelia, who was 7 at the time, climbed onto the couch and wrapped her small arms around Clorinda's neck. Julian, only 4, patted her knee and asked if she needed a Band-Aid. Clorinda laughed through her tears. She pulled both kids close and told them she was okay. She said Mommy was just really happy. And I believe she was. For the first time in 10 years, she was truly free. In the weeks that followed, something shifted in Clorinda. The tension she had carried in her shoulders for so long seemed to ease. She stopped checking her phone during holidays, stopped hoping for messages that would never come. She threw herself into being present with our family, with our children with us. She started calling my mother every Sunday just to chat, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. My mom became the mother she should have had, the one who loved without conditions and celebrated her successes without jealousy. Clorinda also started writing in a journal. She said she wanted to document her journey so that someday, when Amelia and Julian were older, they would understand what their mother had overcome. She wanted them to know that family is not just about blood. It is about the people who choose to love you, who show up for you, who stand beside you when the world tries to tear you down. I learned something important from watching my wife navigate this experience. Forgiveness does not mean allowing people to continue hurting you. You can forgive someone and still choose to keep them out of your life. You can release the anger without opening the door to more pain. Clorinda forgave her mother and sister, not for them, but for herself. Holding on to that resentment was like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to get sick. She let it go so she could be free. But letting go did not mean letting them back in. Some doors once closed should stay closed. Some people forfeit their right to be part of your life, and no amount of success or money should change that. If you are watching this and you have been rejected by people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, I want you to know that their rejection is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of their limitations. You deserve people who choose you without conditions, who celebrate you instead of trying to diminish you. And if those people who hurt you suddenly show up wanting back in your life after you have built something beautiful without them, ask yourself one question. Are they coming back for you? Or are they coming back for what you have become? That question will tell you everything you need to know. I would love to hear your thoughts on this story. Have you ever had to cut off family members who could not accept your choices? How did you find peace with that decision? Leave a comment below and share your experience. Your story might help someone else who is going through the same thing. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for watching and for being part of this community. I wish you the strength to protect your peace, the wisdom to know who deserves a place in your life, and the courage to build a family that loves you exactly as you are. Until next time.